The Texas Rangers are no longer reigning World Series champions, and they're going to have to do something dramatic to get back on the top of the hill. Is that dramatic thing trading Marcus Semien? We're talking about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to the former World Series champion at Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan, covering this team for 11 seasons, including all 6 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. And before we get into talking about Marcus Semien trade, where he would go, who would replace him, and why they should or shouldn't do it, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers winning their in apparently their own words, according to Walker Buehler, their first legitimate title since the 1980s, talking about how people were talking about their Mickey Mouse title in 2020 and how that got under the skin. And now they finally allegedly got a real one. This was absolutely a real one, a thrilling final game of the World Series. And what seems like will be the takeaway of this World Series, if this league is to continue as a copycat league, is that spending money is good. Spending money helps win championships. Having rich owners that are willing to go into and through and to the stratosphere with whatever tax restrictions may be, that is the thing that can help you weather those mistakes, can get you eventually to a World Series. And hoping that the Rangers learn from that, but I'm not thinking that they will. Because this morning, actually, it was last night, Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News wrote an article about 5 big moves that the Rangers could make to contend. Again, they were not contenders following up their World Series championship. They did not even have a 500 record at the end of the year. They did not make the playoffs. They did go for it at the deadline, but completely fell apart in August and were fine in September, but it was too little too late. Now, most of these moves were things that I've thought about. Most of these moves were, kind of more, I don't know, made more sense to me. But the one that jumped out to me, not about re-signing Nathan Eovaldi, not about going for Roki Sasaki, not trading for Jordan Montgomery, but trading away Marcus Semien. This was incredibly dramatic and honestly completely shocked me seeing it from a guy like Evan, who is not clickbait is never a word that I would use to describe what Evan does. He has been the most reliable Rangers reporter for 3 decades. And the fact that he is even writing this shocked me, absolutely stunned me. They put the chance of it happening at 8%, which is way higher than I thought. It's the lowest of all these 5 moves that he suggested. Go and read his piece at dallasnews.com. But this was incredibly wild to me, suggesting this, because first off, wow, he's your captain. He is coming off of, no doubt, a poor season. But this just does not make sense to me for a multitude of reasons. We got to start off with why it's wrong to trade him now, why he is not just completely fallen off the table. He is a little bit on the older side, so there are some concerns about the age, what you would do to replace him, where he would go, and why it is or isn't a good idea. Let's start with why I think it's bad timing to trade Marcus Semien. Now, he is coming off of what is possibly his worst full season as a starting player in the big leagues. The only worst season was 2020, a COVID-shortened season. But this year was a down year for him offensively. 699 OPS, he was league average with the bat. a 100 OPS plus. Still did finish with 23 home runs, 27 doubles. Still did finish with a 4.1 WAR season. A lot of that came from defense and base running. He was one of the best defenders in all of Major League Baseball, not just at second base, not just in the infield, but all of Major League Baseball. You go to his outs above average on his baseball savant page, 100th percentile. Number one, the freaking best in terms of fielding run value. Top 3% of baseball. Base running value, top 10% of baseball. Still an incredible base runner. Still fast. Still has athleticism. Still not a guy who relies on bat speed. He is still strong. He was never a guy who had, elite bat speed. Usually guys like that, when the bat speed falls off, their offense completely falls off the table. That is not the case for Marcus Semien. He was in the 10th percentile of bat speed in the league. That is more by design than a fact of him aging. Look at his sprint speed. Still in the top 20% of baseball in terms of his sprint speed. He takes incredible care of his body. He was able to play all 162 this year. He did not, because the Rangers wanted him to take more days off. They would like him to take more days off in the future. Only played shockingly low 159 games, but he led the league in games played each of the past 4 seasons before this. 162 in 2023, 161 in 2022, 162 in 2021, and 162 again in 2019. This was an overall pretty okay season for Marcus Semien. You combine all of those things. He was the Rangers' second best player this year in terms of Baseball Reference WAR to only Corey Seager. And yeah, he was making $26 million, the third highest paid player, I believe, on the 2024 Rangers, behind DeGrom, behind, I guess he was the fourth highest, not in terms of what the Rangers in total were paying their players, but Scherzer was getting a hefty chunk of change. He was the highest paid Ranger, then Jacob DeGrom, then Corey Seager, then Marcus Semien. But you look at his career, you look at his track record. This is a guy who has been one of the most consistent major leaguers in baseball. 3 different times in the last 6 years has he bounced back from a subpar or bad offensive season to finish top 3 in MVP voting. In 2018, he had a 706 OPS. Bounced back in 2019, had one of the best seasons of his career, 33 home runs and 892 OPS, finished third in MVP voting in 2019. Then 2020, COVID year, had a very bad year, a 679 OPS, just a really terrible year before his free agency that winter. It was a bad time for him to have a bad season. Then he comes out, signs a 1-year deal, a prove it, bet on yourself deal with Toronto, makes his first ever All-Star team that year, wins a Gold Glove, wins his first Silver Slugger as well, finishes third in MVP voting that season as well, has a phenomenal year, then signs that 7-year deal with Texas. 2022, first 6 weeks of the season, he was absolutely abysmal, coming off of that labor stoppage when there was a lockout. He was negotiating that. He was going to a new team. There was a different routine in spring training than what he was used to. So he had an absolutely abysmal first 6 weeks of the season. And then after that grand slam in Oakland, his first year in Texas, he was about the same version of himself. Then still, that was technically a down year, which, by the way, that down bad year, it's a 5.5 WAR season in 2022, that first year in Texas. I think we a lot of times paint it to be worse than it was, but Marcus Semien was not the reason the Rangers lost 94 or 95, 6, however many specifically games they lost in 2022. Then he bounces back and has a phenomenal season in 2023, makes an all-star team yet again, finishes third in MVP voting, has 29 home runs, has 40 doubles, plays every single minute of every single game, all the way through the Rangers' first ever World Series championship. Sets the record for the most plate appearances in a regular season and postseason combined. And then this year has a down year. Not quite the same. Heading into his age 34 season, there are some reasons for concern, but that athleticism has not slipped. He is not slow. He is not weak. He is not all those things that you see on players that are just about to completely tail off in their career. He's not showing any of those telltale signs. This was just a regular bad year for him. I think that collision with Adolis Garcia back in May, I think that made a big impact on him this year. I think he was playing through, at least he's always playing through nicks and bumps and bruises. Every single player is, especially when you play as many games as Marcus Semien did. But I think right now, he just had a bad year. And trading him right now at this low of a value, you also got to think about who the heck is going to play second base if it's not Marcus Semien. Look at who that might be and where the Rangers might even trade him to right after this word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the best place to get all your tickets for all the live events you're wanting to go to. Whether that's a Mavs game, you want to go check out a Stars game, a Cowboys game, or you're saying, no, I don't want to go to sports. I want to go see a concert. I want to go see a stand-up. I want to go see theater. Whatever you want to get live tickets to, live event you want to get tickets to, Gametime is the best place to get those tickets. They've got Gametime picks, which curation makes it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They've got zone deals, and you can save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. They've also got an all-in pricing feature, and you toggle this, and it shows you exactly what the total is going to be up front. No surprise fees at checkout. Love to see that. You can also get panoramic views from your seats. This is the best way to get all of your ticketing needs. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, the question with trading away players, always this, or benching players, or people being frustrated with star players underperforming, or just anybody underperforming. The question that always has to follow it is, okay, so this guy sucks. Who are you getting to replace him? Who's stepping up next? Who is filling that role? Because someone has to play second base every single day, unless you just want to field 8 players and really save some room for the luxury tax that way. That would be certainly a decision that would be the most insane choice. But who do the Rangers have on their bench? Now, theoretically, they do have a guy who should have been an all-star. No, actuality, they do have a guy who should have been an all-star this year in Josh Smith. Josh Smith had a fantastic season. This was a great year for him, a career high in all kinds of offensive categories, from home runs to doubles to stolen bases to batting average, slugging percentage, on-base percentage, all of those career highs. 10% better than league average with the bat. Now, how much of that was just in the first half versus in the second half? How much of it was extremely similar to what Ezequiel Duran did the year before? Now, Zeke Duran the year before had a great first half, and then when the Rangers did still need him to step up for Josh Young's injury, that 6-week period where he was out with that broken thumb down the stretch in August and early September of 2023, both these guys were not able to step up in the way that they did in the first half. Zeke Duran last year, an 870 OPS before the All-Star break, and then a 610 OPS in the second half. 70 games in that first half, 52 in the second half. Not exactly a tiny sample size. And for Smith, the splits are even more drastic. In the first half, Smith played 90 games. He stepped up in a huge way for that Josh Young injury. He was exceptional defensively, offensively. I mean, this offense was so completely dead without Josh Smith. All of that to say, the first half, 860 OPS, a 392 on base percentage, 10 of his 13 home runs on the season, 19 of his 30 doubles. And the second half OPS was terrible. A 565 OPS in the second half. I mean, he had it on base of 265. A lot of his damage, a lot of his offensive excellence came from basically 2 months. He had an OPS north of 900 in April and March, 917. Then in June, he was incredible. 4 of his 13 home runs came in that month, a 924 OPS in the month of June. In July, again, another 4 home run month, a 776 OPS. And then in August and September, he was just abysmal offensively. 556 OPS in August, a 575 OPS in September. This was just not a good hitter down the stretch, and the Rangers were hitting him leadoff, hitting him third, hitting him second. He just was not stepping up in the same way. It kind of felt like those numbers were not sustainable. And if you're replacing a guy who, I mean, I think the first half is about Josh Smith's ceiling, and that's not a bad ceiling. An 860 OPS on base around 400. I mean, a lot of that was inflated by hit by pitches, 10 home runs. That was, a pace for, 15, 20 homer season. That's while playing pretty good defense at second or short or third base. That's pretty solid. Zeke Duran, I think he's got a higher offensive ceiling. I think the defensive ceiling isn't quite as high. He's got a stronger arm than Smith, but in terms of in the field, he's also a little bit faster in terms of straight line speed. So maybe in the outfield, he's got a little bit more range. But in terms of the defensive ceiling, Smith is almost Gold Glove caliber. I think he should have been a Gold Glove candidate for the utility position because he played so many positions. He played them so well. I think he was absolutely snubbed from that, just like he was the All-Star by Willie freaking Castro. But the offensive ceiling of Marcus Semien is top 3 player in the league. This is a guy who's going to get you 25, 30 home runs every single year. Even in the down years, he's still going to give you that consistency. He's still going to give you that elite level of defense. I mean, one of the best defenders in the league, and Smith is very good. I think Zeke Duran can be very good, but the ceiling is nowhere near what Marcus Semien can be. And also, when you think about trading a player away, you also think about who is going to want them. How much value do they have right now? Are you selling high on them? Are you selling low? Why are you trading this guy away? Everyone knows why you would be trading this guy away is just to get off the contract. You think, okay, well, this guy is done. This guy, it doesn't have it. This guy is aging and he is owed quite a bit of money down the road. He's going to make $26 million in 2025. He's going to make $26 million in 2026 and 27, and then $20 million in 2028. So the Rangers have, I believe, about $100 million, maybe $102 million left to pay him at this point over the next 4 seasons, which is the back end of the contract, which, again, like I've talked about a bunch this winter, when you sign free agents to these 5+ year deals, when you sign Semien for 7 years, heading into his age 31 season, you knew eventually those back end years are not going to look good. That's the way these contracts go. You are paying a premium for their prime years. And once those prime years are done, they become an albatross. And that's how the cycle works every single time. That's the way it goes. And when you decided to build for the long-term sustainable future, allegedly, by signing these 3 really massive deals in Semien, Seager, and DeGrom. DeGrom is only 5 years as opposed to the 10 or 7 years that Semien and Seager are. You are not going to get a whole lot of value back from these guys. There are not a whole lot of teams who are like, you know what? I think he's going to bounce back. And so I'm going to give you elite prospects for this guy and not make you take on any of the contract, which, again, in this case, the only reason the Rangers would be trading him away is to get financial flexibility, is to get off of this $26 million a year, to go spend it elsewhere, to go theoretically get better value elsewhere. And if you are trading this guy away at this point for financial flexibility, and he is heading into his age 34 season, where he's going to make $26 million a year for the next 3 years, and then $20 million in his age 27 season or 37 season, then how many teams are just going to straight up eat that money? How many teams have that kind of space and that kind of willingness to say, okay, this guy is going to be worth it for us? The Rangers, you already got the peak years. You already got a top 3 MVP season. You got him to be your leadoff batter and your captain in your first ever World Series champion year. He has been a 2-time All-Star in 3 seasons here. We feel really good about going and trading away some assets to go and get this player and have him just for the back end of this contract, which is the bad part of this contract, where he is no longer the top 3 MVP guy, the consistent, one of the best players in the league, we feel fine paying all that money. No, very few, if any, teams are going to do that. Actually, I'm pretty darn sure that no teams are going to do that. So the Rangers will have to eat some of that money to trade him away to get a little bit of financial flexibility, which at this point, you are just literally burning cash in the name of financial flexibility and trading away a useful player. And despite all that, where the heck would the Rangers even trade him to? Got a few teams that make sense for the Rangers to trade him to if they were going to do it, and why this is an incredibly bad idea, not just for the Rangers now, but for the long term and for the value of this franchise. Right after this word from our sponsors. Now, in this scenario, there are only a handful of teams that have the need for a second baseman, for a star of this caliber, for a stabilizing force, for all of the good things that Marcus Semien brings to a team, and also would be okay with the money. There are, I think I'm even stretching it at 3 teams, 2 teams that I think in my mind could make sense. And even then, I feel like it's a little bit of a long shot. The number one team for me that came to mind when I was looking through who might make sense to make a trade for Marcus Semien that would make sense even for Marcus Semien is the San Francisco Giants. Now, the Giants are in the Bay Area, which is where Marcus Semien is from, playing for both Bay Area teams. He talks about how much he loved Oakland, how much he loved being there. More of an Oakland guy than a San Francisco guy. Grew up just outside of Oakland, I believe. Also went to Cal, which is in the Bay Area. But San Francisco, another Bay Area team, a team that has been looking for a big star. They have been trying to go sign big stars for the last 3 off seasons. They got really close, they thought, on Aaron Judge. I'm sure they're going to be in on the Juan Soto sweepstakes. I don't think they're going to get him. They spent a lot of money on Jung-Hoo Lee to bring him in. He played 37 games before getting hurt this season. They have been a team comprised of a bunch of pretty good players, but not really any great players. They were able to sign Matt Chapman in free agency last offseason and then ink him to an extension this offseason. He is a guy who Marcus Semien has played before on a different Bay Area team back in the day with the A's. But he is a guy who at second base, they were putting out Thairo Estrada every day last year. Played in 96 games, the most of anyone at second base. I'm not sure if all those were at second, but he had a 590 OPS as their everyday second baseman. They have a lot of other guys on this roster that are pretty good, but not great. Fitzgerald had a great year offensively. Matt Chapman had a fine year offensively. Same with Helio Ramos and Michael Conforto. But they are definitely looking for that star, that big bat, that big face of, hey, we finally got our guy. Marcus Semien would be that for them. And I don't see them winning any of these sweepstakes for any of these big free agents. Maybe they end up bringing back Blake Snell. Maybe they end up signing another big name pitcher. Maybe they shock the world and they do get Juan Soto. But they are a team with a lot of financial flexibility, a team with a new head of baseball operations in their former catcher, I was about to say Bruce Bochy, Buster Posey, and he might be willing and happy to make a big splash, and Semien would be that splash for them. The number 2 team that I think makes even a little bit of sense is the New York Yankees. Their second baseman, Gleyber Torres, is a free agent this year. They are one of the 3 teams with more money than God, them, the Mets, and the Dodgers. They are going to need to get back. They're going to need to convince old Juan Soto that, hey, you need to sign here forever. You need to come back here and please, God, be a New York Yankee forever. We're going to do whatever it takes financially to make that possible, not just in paying you, but also bringing in certified bona fide stars, guys who have been on the big stage, who have succeeded on the big stage. That's Marcus Semien. They have an opening at second base. And, well, it makes me disgusted to say this, but it could end up being a fit. And the last team, the only other team that I really think could be anywhere close to a fit, and even this feels like stretching it, is the Dodgers. Their everyday second baseman is Gavin Lux. I think he is probably moving to shortstop. Ideally, they would rather have him at shortstop. I mean, their shortstop every day this year was Miguel Rojas. He's 35 years old. I don't think he's going to put up a 113 OPS plus again. Or maybe they're going to put Mookie Betts out there at shortstop or second base. Maybe this could keep him in right field. They are a team with, again, more money than God and some financial flexibility, because even though Shohei Ohtani is theoretically making $70 million a year, he is only counting for 45 or so million on the books for their tax payroll because of all of that deferral nonsense happening. But again, this even feels like a stretch. These three teams, just three that make a lick of sense at all. But in terms of why this shouldn't happen, I've already talked about why I don't think Marcus Semien is just straight up aging and about to go in the tank, why the backups behind him are just not quite it. I like Zeke Duran. I think he could be an everyday player, but in the fact the Rangers barely played him down the stretch last year, they sent him to AAA to go and fix whatever it was broken with his swing. He finally fixes it, wins, PCL player of the week, has a streak of 5 home runs, or maybe it was 6 home runs in like a span of 4 games or something like that. And they immediately call him up, play him one game, and then he could not see the field on an offense that was horrendous. They couldn't find a spot for Zeke Duran except for once every week, once every other week. And you're telling me they're going to put this guy as the everyday second baseman? Or you think Josh Smith, who had a 590 OPS in the second half, is going to somehow be much, much closer to the 860 OPS that he didn't show any time else in his career? I love Josh Smith. I think he is one of the best bench bats in the league. But if he is your everyday second baseman, a guy who you are plugging in for someone who has been one of the most consistent stars in baseball, one of the most underrated stars in baseball for the last half decade, you're going to fall off a cliff. Where are you going to spend that $25 million or whatever, however much that you're getting per year off of? If, say, you trade him to the Yankees and the Yankees pay all of that money, you got $25 million extra dollars to spend. Where are you spending it that is a better value than Marcus Semien? Where are you upgrading this team? Because that is theoretically what this is. Or you're not going to spend it. You're just going to pocket it and say financial flexibility, financial flexibility, financial flexibility. What's the point of the financial flexibility? What's the point of owning a team if you are not spending the money on that team, if you are not trying to win, if you're not trying to follow up that championship that you just had a year ago, just a year ago, 364 days actually to the day ago? What are you doing? You're making also Chris Young into an absolute liar. You're making him into an untrue man. Him saying this team's going to compete for championships. This team is going to do what it takes to win. You are tying both of his hands and his legs behind his back and throwing him on the train tracks if this is the kind of move that you are forcing him to make in the sake of financial flexibility. Not only that, Marcus Semien is the captain of your team. He is the captain. He is the leader. He is the guy. He was the domino that fell, that started this chain reaction of this miraculous 2023 run. From complete irrelevancy, from complete despair, from complete hopelessness that the Rangers were in at the end of 2021. This is a team with no hope of contending, no long-term prognosis of greatness, no signs of this team is just about to break through. They had a bad farm system. They had a low payroll. They had just traded away the one good homegrown player they had in a long, long time in Joey Gallo. And you had no indication that this team was just about to turn around, even though they were. And then you sign Marcus Semien. Then you sign Corey Seager. Then you sign John Gray, and then all the other domino effects that led to 2023. But Marcus Semien was the first one. He was the first big signing. He was the reason that Corey Seager signed here. Seager's not signing with Texas if they don't sign Marcus Semien first. Seager was not signing here to come here and be, mid-2000s Texas Rangers A-Rod, put up crazy great numbers on a team that stinks and doesn't contend. And if you trade Marcus Semien away, what kind of a message does that send to future free agents, to this team, to this fan base? Why should this fan base give a crap about this team if you're going to trade away the captain, one of the faces of this franchise, one of the anchors that led this team to its first championship? What does it say to the rest of the players in that dugout of, hey, we just traded away your captain. We just traded away a consistent all-star, a guy who finished top 3 in MVP voting, was just such an integral part of establishing this culture and this team. Hey, what does it say to future free agents of, hey, you signed here, we're committed to you, we're loyal to you. Oh my gosh, we're going to put all these things around you. We're going to try and contend. You're going to be the belle of the ball. We're going to have you retire here. We're going to build a statue here. We're going to retire a number, whatever stuff they tell these free agents in the winter to convince them to sign here. How many of them are going to sign here if you trade away your captain in the name of financial flexibility because of one actually bad season? It would be a horrendous look for the Rangers. It would be such a dramatic move in such a terrible, panicky way. And the fact that it's even being considered, dear God, do not hope that this happens. But the fact that it's even being talked about in these circles is just really not a great sign for the Rangers heading into this offseason. Thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy former World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.